We think of The Little Mermaid as a story about a girl changing her body to win a prince. But the reality is far darker. It's actually about a creature undertaking a horrifying act of self-mutilation to escape a terrible cosmic truth. The story was first published in Denmark in 1837 by Hans Christian Andersen. It was conceived in an era of intense spiritual anxiety, and the transformation we think of as magical was, in reality, a desperate ritual born from a deep-seated theological fear. This story has been hiding its true secret in plain sight for 188 years. By the end of this investigation, you won't just know about the pain of her new legs. You will understand the terrifying metaphysical gamble she was forced to make. A gamble for the one thing she was told she could never, ever have: an immortal soul. When you think of The Little Mermaid, a very specific image likely comes to mind. A vibrant underwater kingdom filled with colorful fish and singing crustaceans. You picture a bright-eyed, red-haired mermaid with a powerful voice who falls in love with a human prince at first sight. You remember the Sea Witch, a larger-than-life villain, who offers a deal that seems like a classic fairy tale bargain. We all know the story. Girl gives up her voice, gets her legs, and after a few charming misadventures, she wins the prince's heart, defeats the villain, and secures her happily ever after. It is a cornerstone of childhood nostalgia, a perfect story of love conquering all obstacles. The songs are iconic, the romance is sweeping, and the message feels simple and uplifting. It's a story we feel we know inside and out, a safe and comforting piece of our collective memory that seems to hold no dark corners. We have celebrated it for decades as a testament to the power of love and the pursuit of a dream, no matter how impossible it may seem. I'm genuinely curious for those of you who, like me, grew up with that vibrant, animated version. What was your reaction the first time you heard whispers of the original darker story? Let me know in the comments. But this vibrant, romantic fantasy is a beautiful lie. It's a glittering seashell hiding a pearl of absolute darkness. The story we've been told is a modern comfort, a complete distortion of the chilling philosophical horror story Hans Christian Andersen actually wrote. To understand the real story, we have to forget the love story entirely and focus instead on the horror story hiding in plain sight. This goes beyond a fairy tale just being darker in its original form. We're looking at a story whose entire purpose has been completely inverted. We have been sold a story about romance, when the truth is a story about existential terror. We need to dig past the animation, past the songs, and past the happily ever after. We need to go back to the original text, to the source, where a much more troubling and profound narrative is waiting. The truth is far more complex and infinitely more tragic. In the modern version, getting legs is a magical moment, a swirl of light, a moment of wonder, and a new body. In Andersen's original text, it is an act of unending torture. The Sea Witch doesn't just hand her a potion, she describes its effects with chilling precision. The mermaid drinks it, and it feels like a sharp sword is being driven through her body, splitting her in two from the inside out. She faints from the sheer, unimaginable pain. And that is only the beginning. When she wakes up on the shore with her new legs, she discovers the true nature of her bargain. Every single step she takes on land for the rest of her short life feels as if she is walking on the sharpest of knives. The pain is so severe that her delicate feet often bleed onto the ground. Andersen doesn't treat this as a minor side effect. He makes it the entire point. But have you ever stopped to ask yourself why an author would put such a brutal detail in a fairy tale? This constant physical torment serves a crucial narrative purpose that the modern versions completely erase. It establishes that this transformation was never meant to be a gift. In truth, it was a curse. And clicking that subscribe button is the only way to keep ourselves safe from this curse. It is a state of perpetual, horrifying suffering that she must endure in silence. Her new body is a prison of pain, a constant bloody reminder of the unnatural bargain she has made. This was no dream come true. For her, it was a waking nightmare. But as horrifying as this physical torment was, it was only a symptom. It was the shell casing for the real bullet. Because the secret we are hunting for has nothing to do with her body, and everything to do with what she was trying to save her soul from. The mermaid's voice in the popular story is just a beautiful singing voice, a bargaining chip to be traded. In the original, it's her entire essence. It is described as the most enchanting and powerful voice in the entire world. A sound so beautiful it could make sailors forget their homes and families, and listen until their ships were dashed on the rocks. Her voice is her power, her identity, and her connection to her world. So when the sea witch demands it as payment, she doesn't just ask for it, she physically cuts out the mermaid's tongue. By giving it up, the mermaid isn't just becoming mute. She is allowing herself to be mutilated, sacrificing the very core of what makes her unique. On land, she becomes a beautiful, silent object, unable to express her thoughts, her pain, or her love. She cannot tell the prince that it was she who saved him from the shipwreck. She cannot explain where she came from. She can only smile and dance through her agony. This profound sense of voicelessness reflects the deep anxieties of its author, Hans Christian Andersen. He was a man who often felt like an outsider in the elite literary and social circles of Copenhagen. He came from a very poor background and always felt a sense of inadequacy. He also harbored concealed homosexual desires, which in the deeply conservative society of the 19th century could never be spoken aloud. The mermaid's silence is the silence of anyone who has had to hide their true nature to survive in a world that wouldn't accept them. It's the pain of having a universe of feelings inside you, with no way to let it out. This brings us to the prince himself. And it's here that we find the clue that begins to unravel a much bigger conspiracy, one that suggests this story isn't a real fairy tale at all. Perhaps the most disturbing and radically altered part of the original tale is the character of the prince. He is not the brave romantic hero we know. He is a man of casual, almost thoughtless cruelty. He is certainly fond of the mermaid. He finds her beautiful, mysterious, and entertaining. But he never, for a single moment, loves her as an equal. He treats her like a beautiful, exotic pet. He calls her his dear little foundling and is charmed by her devotion to him. He even has her sleep on a velvet cushion placed just outside his bedroom door, like a prized and trusted animal. His affection is a form of objectification. He loves that she belongs to him, but he has no interest in who she truly is. This becomes tragically clear when he openly confesses to her that his heart belongs to another, the princess from a neighboring kingdom, whom he mistakenly believes saved him from the shipwreck. He tells the Little Mermaid to her face that he must marry this other woman, and he expects her to be happy for him. The mermaid's heartbreak is profound and absolute, but the prince remains utterly oblivious to her suffering. He sees her sad eyes, but assumes she is just a simple creature incapable of such deep feeling. This goes far beyond a simple story of unrequited love. In reality, it's a chilling story of complete objectification, reflecting the rigid social hierarchies and gender dynamics of the 19th century. Her sacrifice, her agony, her very existence means nothing to him beyond his own amusement. This constant pain, this voicelessness, this cruel indifference, they aren't just tragic plot points. They are symptoms of a much deeper, more terrifying problem. A problem Andersen reveals in a single, chilling detail that most people miss. A detail that finally proves this was never a story about winning a prince's love, but about escaping a fate worse than death. It all comes down to the one thing that humans have, and that in the original story, mermaids simply do not. The true horror of The Little Mermaid, the engine that drives the entire story, begins with a simple, terrifying rule explained to her by her grandmother. Mermaids live for 300 years, far longer than humans. But when they die, they don't go to an afterlife. There is no heaven or eternal reward for them. They simply cease to exist, dissolving into the cold sea foam, their consciousness vanishing forever. The reason for this is simple. Mermaids do not have an immortal soul. Think about that for a moment. What would you be willing to risk to escape complete oblivion? This is the existential dread that fuels the mermaid's every action. You see, the prince was never the real prize. He was merely the mechanism she needed to obtain a soul. Her grandmother explains the one, slim loophole in this cosmic law. If a mermaid can win the true love of a human, so much so that he marries her and pledges his eternal devotion, then a part of his immortal soul will flow into her body, granting her the one thing she can never have on her own: a place in the afterlife. Suddenly, the entire story shifts on its axis. Her quest wasn't driven by teenage love or a simple fascination with the human world. Instead, it was fueled by the primordial fear of utter annihilation, the terror of non-existence. This concept of beautiful but soulless nature spirits was not Andersen's invention. It draws directly from much older European folklore, particularly the myth of the Undine, a water elemental popularized by the 19th century writer Frédéric de la Motte Fouquet. In these stories, the Undine can only gain a soul by marrying a mortal man. Andersen was tapping into a well-established tradition of liminal magical beings who exist outside the human cycle of sin, redemption, and salvation. The mermaid is willing to endure any pain, not for a kiss, but to escape the horrifyingly empty fate that awaits her. To truly understand the mermaid's desperation, we must understand her creator. Hans Christian Andersen was a man of deep but incredibly anxious Christian faith. He was also a man who felt like a profound outsider his entire life. He was born into poverty and spent his youth desperately trying to claw his way into the upper echelons of Danish society. He always felt like he was performing, trying to be someone he wasn't. More importantly, he harbored intense, unrequited loves for other men. His diaries are filled with longing for men like Edvard Collin, the son of his wealthy patron. Collin ultimately rejected Andersen's intense affections and married a woman, leaving Andersen devastated. Many literary scholars and historians now read The Little Mermaid, which was written shortly after this painful rejection, as a deeply personal and tragic allegory. The mermaid is Andersen. She is an unnatural creature from a different, hidden world, who is willing to endure any pain and mutilate her own nature to enter the world of the one she loves. Her transformation and constant suffering mirror Andersen's own attempts to transform himself, to fit into a society that he felt would never truly accept his fundamental nature. Her voicelessness is his inability to speak his truth. And most crucially, her desperate desire for an immortal soul is a direct reflection of his own desperate desire for salvation and acceptance in the eyes of a God whose rules he felt he might be breaking. The story is a prayer born of pain. And here is the clue that changes everything, the one piece of evidence that makes the entire mystery click into place. The Little Mermaid is not a traditional fairy tale. This is the crucial distinction. Unlike the stories famously collected by the Brothers Grimm, which were gathered from ancient oral traditions and centuries of folklore, this story was an original work of literary fiction. It was invented, from start to finish, by one man, Hans Christian Andersen, and published in 1837. This is the fulcrum of our entire investigation. So if he invented every detail himself, what was he really trying to tell us? It means that every single detail we have discussed, the excruciating pain of walking on knives, the concept of soulless mermaids, the 300-year lifespan, the cruel and indifferent prince, and the story's ultimate ending, was a conscious, deliberate, and personal artistic choice made by Andersen. Nothing in this story is accidental or a remnant of some forgotten ancient myth. This story didn't evolve over centuries like an ancient myth. Instead, it serves as a direct, unfiltered window into the anxieties, the fears, the hopes, and the spiritual crisis of its author at a specific moment in time. This is why it feels so different from other fairy tales. He wasn't just writing a simple morality tale or a myth to explain a natural phenomenon. What he was actually crafting was a complex psychological and theological drama. The story, as Andersen wrote it, does not end with the prince's wedding. As the prince marries the human princess, the Little Mermaid's heart breaks, and she knows that her gamble has failed. At the sunrise, she will dissolve into sea foam, her consciousness ceasing to exist forever. But just before dawn, her sisters rise from the waves. Their beautiful long hair has been cut short. They explain that they traded their hair to the sea witch for one final, horrifying offer: an enchanted knife. If the Little Mermaid takes the knife, murders the sleeping prince, and lets his warm blood drip onto her feet, they will merge back together and become a mermaid's tale once more. Her pain will end, and she will be saved, able to return to her world and live out her 300 years. It is a final, brutal test. But standing over the prince's bed, she cannot do it. She still loves him, despite his indifference. At the last moment, she throws the knife into the sea, and then throws herself into the water, expecting to be annihilated. But she is not. She does not dissolve. Instead, she feels herself rising into the sky. She has been transformed into a daughter of the air. These are ethereal, invisible spirits who are given a chance to earn a soul. They are told that if they perform 300 years of good deeds for mankind, they will finally be granted the gift of immortality. Let's be clear, this was no happy ending. It was a form of theological probation. And now, after digging through the layers of pain, silence, and theology, the 188-year-old secret can be revealed in its entirety. The terrifying transformation you see was never really about changing fins to feet. That was just the physical symbol for the real horror underneath. The true transformation was a metaphysical one, an attempt by a soulless, primordial creature to cheat cosmic law and claw its way into the cycle of eternal life that humans take for granted. The excruciating pain was not a punishment from the witch. It was the necessary price of admission into the world of beings with souls. The agony was a constant reminder that she was an alien, an outsider in a world she was not built for. She was willing to mutilate her body, surrender her identity, and endure the casual contempt of the one she loved, all to escape the cold, dark, and final truth of her own existence, that she was destined to be nothing more than sea foam. It is the story of an outsider's desperate, bloody gamble for a place in heaven, and it was written by a man who feared, deep down, that because of who he was and who he loved, he would never truly belong on earth or in the kingdom of God. In the end, we realize this story was never a romance. It was something far more profound, a prayer from the abyss. This desperate search for meaning in a world that feels upside down, it's a theme that echoes in another beloved story. But what if the madness wasn't just a metaphor? The 163-year-old story of Alice in Wonderland might be hiding a real-life tragedy of Victorian medicine that's far more unsettling than any rabbit hole. Click the video on your screen right now to find out what really hides in Wonderland.